Okay, we're opening the special meeting of the planning board. Guys, special meeting of the planning board at 7:08 on November 27th, Monday. Steve is not coming, so this is the board. And we are continuing to get a draft decision, which several of us went over with in the office this afternoon. So there are some changes or additions and wordsmithing that we were doing as we went along. Is there, Sarah? You got to come up with this microphone thing. I don't know which one is working.
That one is, I think that one is.
That one should work fine.
Yep. Oh, just bend it over.
Yeah, actually, yeah, exactly. It's probably
Starting to lift. Or move your table out,
Where
guys.
those are going to go? Because they're attached to that big thing underneath it.
Okay,
Sarah?
so I'm just going to give you the new news since the last hearing. First, we submitted a preliminary drainage plan, which Horsley is about 70% there. They indicate there's absolutely no problem whatsoever dealing with all of the stormwater runoff on site. I don't know, that was a concern that was raised at the last hearing, so that should not be an issue, and I think the way the draft is written requires the applicant to meet all stormwater requirements of the bylaw. Number two, there was a plan that was submitted before the last meeting that never made it up onto the screen that I just want to make sure that you are aware of, that has the fire lane routed through to Fairgrounds and has relocated the playground area. And we have submitted a supplemental traffic opinion from Bristol Traffic and Transportation Consulting, Inc. They're the consultants. Lloyd Bristol is the traffic engineer who was formerly with Cullinan before Cullinan dissolved. Cullinan did all of the traffic impacts for the project that was previously slated for this site back at the time when it was a significant amount of commercial and residential use. So he's taken a look at his 2001 report and updated it based on the current uses on the site and the proposed uses here, and finds the traffic impact to be significantly less than that was already previously approved by the board in its 2003 decision. And so a copy of that letter has been submitted for the file. And I think those are the new pieces of information since the last hearing.
Board members? Andrew?
So I think the intent tonight is to walk through the draft decision, and hopefully you all had a chance to read it. In advance copies, there's some additional information that we flagged. We'll be going through some changes that we're suggesting, and certainly board members, if you have any changes that you want, now's the time to speak up as we go through.
Okay, so that would make the most sense right now. The first page is just boilerplate. The second page is more boilerplate, just sort of spells out the percentages. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. That gives you the breakdown on the units and the cost of the units. Page 3 is a review of the sections that they have asked relief from. Summary on page 4 is a summary of the DHCD approved plan for the units. And then you get into the basis of the findings. we've wordsmithed some of this, commas, parentheses, things like that. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about the findings.
It's just the basis for the findings, which are, that's on page 4 and 5. In the red line version, we've added reference to this Bristol Transportation
It's
letter.
this one, the red line version, there's two changes in here.
And basically, a reference to the prior Pineland subdivision file from the board. So those are your two new additions.
And I might point out that the traffic generated by 82 units, 2 units per lot, 41 lots in 2003, were 3,100, and the commercial were 3,100 trips a day. With the 64 units and restrictions on number of bedrooms, there were no restrictions on any bedrooms in the 82-unit residential and commercial before. It's down to 800 trips a day. So they were able to extrapolate off the 2002-2003 traffic study based on the much more intense plan for this property after we bought the property from the electric company to what's being proposed today. So we did make an effort to go out and find the traffic report that was done. Okay, basis of findings.
Can I make one
Yep.
point? I just want to remind you that with a rental community like this, the parking and traffic situation is quite different than with a home ownership situation. With home ownership, you sell the houses, they're out of your control for the most part, and you can no longer say how many people live in it, how many cars they have, and that's often what leads to mischief. With the rental community, that the way this is going to be managed under a tight management program, it gives a lot of control to the owner to control those issues.
Anybody have any comments on the findings?
I don't know if it's appropriate now, but is it a schematic of where the parking's gonna be on Wade Drive? Any kind
We saw that in the
Yeah,
plan the
I
last
think-
of,
time.
there was in someplace?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was up on the
Can you-
screen.
Catherine, can you show that plan? Do you have the plan from last time?
Parallel.
Yeah, try that.
You have to make the road 20 feet wider. And it's not going one way.
Oh, there you go. I didn't find that.
Right there.
Okay, that's about where I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any issues about the findings? The findings that we have listed in this decision, in case for people who haven't seen it, are pretty boilerplate. The plan entitled Tacoma Green, the application, the response to the RFP by Halkeen. All of these items that was something we added to the language. All of these things are available as a public record. That was one phrase that we added here. Technical reviews, the master plan, the 40B housing production plan, which we completed last year, Old South Road corridor study, which is being done as a result of Richmond, and longstanding issues with Old South Road, 2001 report that we just referenced, plans and documents in planning board, the previous file, which is called Pinelands Drive subdivision, and assorted correspondence and documents that are on file at the planning board, from the neighbors, from your attorney, and anything else that has come in and was put into the file. So it's all referenced. Vote of the Board of Selectmen on the memorandum of agreement from 2017, October 5th. It says, in addition, the planning board considered representations, testimony, and correspondence received in connection with and made part of the record, as I just stated. The public hearings on September 14th, October 12th, November 16th, and tonight. Minutes of these meetings are on file with the planning board and up on the town website when approved. So that was that section. There's some wordsmithing going on in the findings on page 5. And that's where, Sarah, where you go to your red line version. You'll see the highlighted section, go to Sarah's red line version, that's what's going in instead. It references the letter and changes some of the other documents.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could we go through these in order and then we'll get to that? I'd like the board to just,
Well, this goes here.
the actual findings, if we could start on page 5.
Yep, that was just above it. Based upon its review of the application in accordance with so forth and so on, materials submitted by the applicant and others, the testimony received at the public hearing, the planning board finds that. Go for it, Andy.
So again, the first bullet, if the board is inclined to approve, this is a basic finding that you have to find, which is that it's in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw. The second bullet is that it provides the diversity of housing opportunities as cited by the master plan.
And to put that thing closer to you. There's a lot of people are watching online. That is if this thing is working.
Short of stripping it out now.
That's close enough.
Why don't you just swing this way? There you go. I know, but this is unfortunate, but it's about the best we're going to do.
It will
Still
pick
not
you up,
working.
Andrew. You don't have to hold it. It will pick you up that far away.
Okay.
Second bullet, okay, we already discussed that.
Yep.
The third bullet is that it's consistent and furthers the objectives of the goals and implementation strategy of the housing production plan. Number 4. that it
We
will-
added the words, as approved by the Board of Selectmen and DHCD and the state in that section. The third one.
The fourth bullet is that creates a compact neighborhood in a mid-island area with consistency and flexibility. It's proximate to adjacent commercial uses for the convenience of the occupants. And this is a specific provision of the rental community requirement. And then we expand on, again, what the walking distances are to the various groups, various nodes and schools, et cetera. The next bullet is that there's no direct impact to the immediately surrounding properties.
Bless you.
And those consist of properties all owned by the town, with the exception of the NHA property, which is at the corner of Waite Drive and Tacoma. The next one is that these two individual lots, each meeting the minimum, are basically, consistent, and that their comprehensive development and integrated development is consistent with the bylaw and the issuance of the RFP.
There was some wordsmithing in the first sentence. Sarah, if you want to mark that. I'll give it to you later, but there's some wordsmithing, some rearranging of the words.
I got it.
The next section is about the parking, and again, that it's to make clear that the waiver isn't eliminating the 32 spaces. It's basically requiring 82 on-site and that 32 are provided off-site. And there's a discussion about that. The next bullet is about the two driveways that are on Waite Drive, that's a technical requirement because there are two.
Sure, there's more wordsmithing.
The next is what Chairman Williams had described, which is in the red line version, which is a discussion about its relationship to the earlier subdivision and the earlier intensity. The next bullet is about the mitigation measures that we talked about at the last meeting. So that includes Waite Drive being constructed. It recognizes the funding that we talked about at the last meeting. Number 2 is the no parking posting on Tacoma on the northeast side. I don't know if the other side needs to be posted. It was raised, and no parking allowed on fairgrounds from Tacoma to Old South Road. Number 4 talks about the adjacent 200-space parking area at 2 Fairgrounds Road, and the fact that needs to be connected to provide for through access out to Old South Road.
Yeah, Sarah, right there, we clarified all the way through to Old South Road.
Okay.
Number 5 provides that additional parking can be provided on other CN zone land if needed. That's lots 82, 91 through 94, which again have no immediate need for them right now. And also the process of taking Amelia Drive as a public way, it recognizes the receipt of $10,000 towards the creation of the plan from another project at 21 Old South Road. The next bullet, we're on page 8, talks about that these need to be local action units. So again, these will count on the subsidized housing inventory list. And then the next bullet, which has a series of review objectives from the site plan provision,
Are you still on page 8?
page 8.
Okay, Sarah, we did add something in number 3 where it says only no access onto Fairgrounds Road except for the fire lane.
Right.
We had to add that language, because otherwise it says nothing onto Fairgrounds Road.
So there's a discussion under number 1 about amenities of vegetative buffer and other things that are being required, greenbelt easement, why it's not a good idea to cross that with through traffic. Number 2, again, is a reference to natural features. The recommendation is the 8 remaining lots provide a transition from the CN zoning, and that they retain vegetation on them until such time that they're released by the selectmen. Number 3, safety and convenience through the site, talks about the sidewalks and other things that are provided.
That's where the fire lane goes.
4 is the proposed sewage. Of course, this is connected to water and sewer systems. 5, the refuse disposal is handled like all residential uses, and that's part of their management plan. 6, the drainage and subsurface, according with the rules and regulations. This is where the Horsley-Witten Group review comes in. And again, we have a commitment letter from them that that's going to be going to meet the requirement, and it will be reviewed by Ed Pesci. Those plans come in 6 months, within 6 months after the date of the decision. Okay. Off-street parking is discussed, again, because it's both on and off-site.
We added a phrase here, Andrew, outside parking being provided, there is town-owned property,
Right?
in the
Can I ask a
control,
question about that?
town-controlled property in the neighborhood.
Do we have to have a commitment from the selectmen
We are,
for that? I mean,
it's conditioned upon, I mean,
so,
there has to be before the issuance of the first CO.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
and they know all about that.
They've taken one vote, but yes,
Thank you.
it's required.
Well,
Where were we? Page 9?
Yep, number 8.
Okay, so we're on page
Page 10.
Page 10. Minimization of traffic and
Sorry.
safety impacts.
Hold on a second, Sarah, number 9, page 9, number 1, we added except for the
I
fire
got it.
access again.
Yep.
Okay. And this is
Page 10, number 8, again, we've talked about that in the mitigation measures about traffic. Number 9 is the adequacy of town services, which are addressed. The next bullet talks about the performance standards. And here is number 1, is to the extent feasible, access to the site should be provided utilizing a common driveway or a side street. In this case, it's both. It's a common driveway to Waite Drive, which is a side street, not Fairgrounds Road, the main road. So it's part of our rules, our basic site plan review. Driveway access is limited in size, which again, it's, the finding here is that it's properly designed.
And Sarah, there's where they didn't do the parentheses too.
Got it.
Number 3, ensure safe pedestrian vehicular circulation within the site. Again, I think we've discussed that. Number 4, this is the issue where the special permit granting authority may require a traffic mitigation plan be submitted, which addresses the traffic impacts. The board took a vote early on that this was not required, and it's not a requirement of the bylaw that it be submitted. Based on the earlier traffic plan that was part of, again, an earlier effort, I think it's demonstrated this is significantly below.
I fixed some typos in that paragraph. just so you know.
There were some, and then we added, I think, town-owned property, adjacent town-owned property kind of thing, somewhere in that paragraph.
Okay.
11, page 11, sidewalks, bike paths may be required by the special permit granting authority. Again, there's interior paths that are provided, including along Waite Drive. Parking areas designed to reduce their visual impacts, and the parking areas here are really screened on all sides, either by the buildings, by the access, or by the intervening lots. The planning board may, at its discretion, require enhanced landscaping. I didn't receive any comments that was needed. It seems that the site is extensively landscaped. The stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces. So again, this is if it's infeasible or undesirable. So here there may be an opportunity to connect to the drainage provided at the police station, which is, again, a swale type and an open. We don't have permission to do that. This opens that possibility. Otherwise, it will be provided entirely on-site. So this would allow that to happen if it's desirable. Number 11 is about utilities underground, which is, again, a requirement. Number 12 is the outside storage, which, again, is part of the final plans and needs final review by the HDC. There's a summary at the end, the last bullet, which it's a basic finding of compliance with the bylaw, and again, finding that the traffic study is not required and it's not necessary. So we move to the decision part, and on page 12, basically, this is granting certain approvals under the bylaw. The first is for the creation of the project. The second is for details the overall density. The third specifically references the parking.
We're going to add, I think,
And there's maybe some additional, I'm sorry, so I skipped over number 2. And Jonathan, can you help me with that one?
This
or
is
you
the
guys
one with the
were-
waiver of the setbacks to the extent necessary at the end of that paragraph, too.
Right, so
Yeah, please.
that's the issue about the original application called for the waiver of the setbacks to 0 between the two lot lines.
And that's so that one building can span the lot lines with a
Right.
0 setback.
So the point is that that waiver, we've discussed waiving that all along, that was appropriate. Article 20, in the event that it receives final authorization, I guess correct, I mean, it allows it anyway, but I think the application did request that, and I don't think it hurts to grant it at this point.
To the extent necessary, just in case something happens with the Attorney General, it didn't pass muster up there. They asked for it when they
Is
applied.
that clear?
That's very clear.
You got it, guys?
Couldn't they just change the lot line?
yes,
I mean, that could be done, right?
correct.
Except if you had 0 lot line running through one building. Can't change that lot line.
Before you do the building, you can't go around the building.
Right.
Jog it around.
Yeah.
That would be real hard.
Okay.
So if you grant the waiver to the extent necessary, it allows a 0 setback.
Okay, where were we? So
Number 3?
3 is, again, the parking that we've talked about, which is the 82-32 split. Number 4 is about the 2 driveways. Number 5 is, again, approving the site plan review. And then number 6 is sort of a catch-all, if there's other specific permits or approvals that weren't specifically called out, which is a standard thing. So we get into the specifics about, under A, density, and the affordability conditions. So 1 talks about the total number. Again, it's a repeat of what we've talked about. Number 2 is the mix of bedrooms, which again, the bylaw requires a 10%
Got rid of the parentheses.
3-bedroom requirement in order to qualify for the subsidized housing inventory. Number 3, 4, and 5 talk about the number of units and the different income limits. And so does 6, which again, those are market, those 13 dwelling units are market rate.
Can I ask one thing? Is there
But-
any like, dollar amount instead of just,
It's based on HUD.
no, I see, I understand what it says, but is there any,
There
any
is.
idea of what the rents are gonna be? Like,
Today versus next
I
week.
understand that part, but I think it would be
That's a
nice to
reasonable
know
question.
the studio's gonna be about.
I did have a slide up for a previous meeting that showed the ranges, sorry.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
We could amend that. I mean, we
The
can have
No,
the,
no, I don't necessarily
Constantly
want it in there, I just would
readjusting.
like to know.
Yeah, and you can't put it in here.
The way the decision is proposed and drafted is that it's pegged to the HUD limits.
Right.
And then how it's done, and those change from time to time. The workforce units are pegged to the way that mass housing determines what those rents are, which is a little different than the HUD, but it's essentially the same because it's a different program. We did, as part of our submission and our previous presentations in front of the planning board, submit what we anticipated the range would be based on today's numbers and what the underwriting reflected. These would be the numbers that we will submit to DHCD for our financing application. So we can produce those numbers, but they are
I know
living
there's some
Do you know
change.
what they are?
numbers.
Just,
I can't tell you. If you give me about,
he's going, Tucker is going to go get it, and then we'll come back to that.
yeah, that's fine.
yeah, I can
Okay.
pull up on my
That's fine.
phone.
It's not that big a
Give me
deal.
a
I just-
few minutes.
Because I believe a family of 4 at 80% maybe is 160, or,
That sounds maybe a little.
or,
Why don't we,
That
why
might
don't we
be
move
right.
on?
150 or
Maybe
150.
for, that's not, maybe
I'm
for
fine
four-person
with that.
family.
Yeah, 4-person
I
family.
can pull it up and get back to you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so, again, we're on page 14, so let's skip down to B, utility infrastructure and improvements.
We
So,
had some wordsmithing, Sarah, in number 3. Town on
So-
land, construction. Remember, Andy, we took out cost of installation as such playground, construction on town on land.
okay,
So
let's
there's some words on
just go
Let's go
to
one.
we
one
still in
first.
one?
So,
We haven't hit one yet.
it. Okay.
number
I
1
turned the page
allows
already.
certain
HCC has-
flexibility
has
with the
put
HTC
these
to
ones.
finish their review. So it allows them to modify the buildings, provided they don't grow in size or reduce some of the setbacks. Number 2 talks about the final plan, including showing the playground on that plan. Number 3, which is where there's a few changes, but basically this says if a broader playground is developed on an adjoining lot, and Lot 82 and other land were considered, that they would provide $20,000 towards that installation of the playground.
Or such playground construction costs,
The
not installation.
number 4 talks about the standard connections to sewer and water based on the current fees. 5, prior to the approval of the final plans, we need the final water quality certificate from the water company. Number 6, this
Isn't
talks
there any
about the
top?
laundry, which we've discussed in detail. And I don't have the final version,
do.
but there were
We took out, in addition,
options.
the applicant shall, one of the following options, shall use one of the following options. A, in-unit laundry in the 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units in at least one centrally located laundry and storage area, or, which we didn't really fully want. B, one group laundry facility and storage area in each building. We took out the word the basement. It's up to them where they put it. Or C, in-unit, all units have their own in-unit washer and dryer on storage in the central building, because I believe we had talked about no basement in the one closest weight, the storage units in the middle building. And the ADA units, you're going to try to get them in one building, so the ADA units will have their own storage in the building where they are, which is like Fairgrounds building. You want to come up, because we had a little discussion about all the options in order to get units in every one of the apartments. If they didn't do the foundation under the building on Waite Drive, they may be able to put the units in all of the units.
The concern was raised that if we had ADA units in a building that had no basement, and that was where the storage would be, then you have people that are potentially mobility impaired, having to go to other buildings to get to their storage units. So the commitment was, if we were able to, if we end up with a plan where we're relying on not having basements in every building, that the ADA units would have their own storage units in their buildings, and we would figure that out.
And then the
So I
other
don't
thing
know
we
how-
talked about was a slab on grade on the big building on Waite Drive, the one furthest back,
Right.
which would save money on that foundation, which is what you said the first time we
Right.
saw you. Have the storage units in the middle, but the ADA units, which are the ones we were concerned about, would have their units in probably the front building.
Yeah.
And that would free up enough capital to put in washers and dryers in all of the units.
Potentially, yeah. Well, I mean, we've got a current design right now where we think we can actually fit the washer and dryers in,
Stacks.
yeah, in all the units is the current. I mean, we got a long way to go with HTC and all that for the plans. We're kind of ending up a little bit of a worst of both worlds, because now we have two basements and then individual washer and dryers in all units. It's the best of both worlds from a marketing perspective, but in terms of trying to keep the capital costs down. But in terms of the value of like the give and take and all that, we think it's a fair compromise in terms of what, the concerns raised.
So what we did in this one, we had the A, we had the B, and we added the C in all the units, their own washer and dryer. And storage in the central building, and we already covered the ADA units in A. I didn't know, Andrew, I thought about this after we did this afternoon, as to allowing no basement. We don't have that in here. We're allowing slab on grade for the building that's closest to Waite Drive. That should probably be an option in here?
No.
Or we're just gonna
We
let
can
it
handle
go?
that through the final plans.
Okay, so that, I just wanted you guys to know what the conversation has been with them, trying to get the units all to have their own, instead of like a college dormitory. David?
So all the ADA units now in one building?
No, well, no.
They were
They're
talking
all-
about it.
Right now, they're in all three different buildings
Yeah.
and scattered throughout. So depending on what happens with the basements, we might have to move some around and put it in just two buildings.
But wherever they go, they have their storage going with them.
That's right. And we might even do that by making storage on their own floor, not necessarily depending on
Yeah.
how it works out. So
So I just wanted all the options to be in here, so we added that other option.
well, Tucker just really has it here. I do have the rents and the income ranges, which hopefully is the same as which Tucker's.
Which is today, but they reassess them every 6 months or every
Well,
year?
this was at the time of the
They just
application.
screwed it up
I
in the
haven't-
spring.
I haven't updated them. So I think just using the two-bedroom is sort of an indicator if you're trying to get a feel for what these are. And I think that's assuming it's a two-bedroom assumes it's a three-person household for the purpose of this chart. The 30% AMI units, there's only 3 of those, so that would be Section 8 for those 3 units,
Are you going to do Section 8?
or 3 project-based through
Okay.
DHCD to get the very most affordable units. And then that income range becomes just the limit on the tenant share in terms of what they earn, not the value of the subsidy or the value of the voucher that's paid by the Section 8 voucher. For the 60% AMI in a two-bedroom, that's $1,270, and that would be an income range of $44,000 to $54,000 a year for a 60% unit. For a 120% unit, two-bedroom, it's about 92 to 108. And that range is, the low end of that range is based on, you need to make a certain amount of money in order to be able to afford the rent. So it's not just a limit, there's also a bottom, and this is based on standard credit. Sometimes we'll stretch that a little bit one way or the other, but that's a typical range that we establish for creditworthiness. And that rent is $26.90 per month on the 120% unit. And then for market rate, which we're really estimating to be about 140% AMI for our purposes, is over $107,000 a year, and that rent is estimated at $31.30. That's helpful.
Thanks a lot.
And they have studio units, one-bedroom units, two-bedroom units, and three-bedroom units.
Yeah, there's a whole mix. That's just
Yeah.
one of the unit types out of the.
And all the affordability is not all in one building, because you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so everybody's okay with those options?
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we done with the laundry?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're still on page 15.
Holding it up.
Well, we're on 14. Our old one is 14.
Okay. The next one talks about that the lighting conforms to the dark skies, so again, that's the down lighting and the bylaw that requires that. Number 8 is an important condition which talks about all the landscaping, lighting, and other amenities are maintained in good working order and appearance in accordance with the final plans, as long as the decision is in effect. And at the discretion of the planning board, minor changes can be made without going to a public hearing.
We did some wordsmithing in here, if you remember, about maintenance, what happens to them if they become
Right.
not nice. We have some language. I didn't write it all down here. It was more of an as-needed thing as to what happens if they fall into disrepair. And the word maintaining was a big component of what we added. So maintenance of these items, however you want to word it.
And the next one is, again, the town water and sewer connection requirement. So then we move to C, implementation and development. So all of these projects require a pre-construction meeting. The next one is that talks about the issuance of the CO to make sure that they are basically a ratio of the affordable units. And that's really a less than 80%, so it's the 30 and the 60% need to be provided at the ratio.
Wherever you see the word 80% of AMI,
It's going to say less than.
it's going to say less than 80% because there aren't any quote-unquote 80%. There are 30s, 60s, and 120s. So it's throughout the decision, but that'll all be changed.
Conditions 3 and 4 talk about really the requirement for a written lease, and that it's a minimum of 1 year and no dwellings used or occupied as Airbnb, short-term homestay lodging or vacation rental program, which you're going to find in more of our decisions. That's an issue.
Yeah, because it is an issue with the covenant unit right now.
The mitigation measures, again,
First certificate of occupancy in that first one.
so this is where it's a requirement that basically the mitigation measures are completed prior to the first CO certificate of occupancy, not the final.
I think that's a good change.
Did we arrive at that word request, or did we change that word request? Or did we get?
You all needed, there was
There's
some
going to be some little wordsmithing going on in here about this word request.
I think the clear intent is that this is a requirement, and it's the words that were requests have really been changed to required as a condition of the permit.
Or what the attorney said, decision is based upon the representations. I think that's where we ended up, that one phrase somehow. You know where we're
Jonathan,
headed.
you all, I was in and out when they
Yeah, we were
discussed
talking about that.
this.
So Joel came up with decision is based on
I think it's clear
representations. So
that-
whatever we do, you understand what we're doing in it.
It's clear, I think that we've heard the board, that this is a requirement, that there will be no project without these mitigation measures.
Correct.
And that's really the intent here, is that they are a requirement.
Correct.
So it's no pretty please, you're doing it.
E, jumping to general regulatory and miscellaneous conditions. So, item number 1, again, that's the fully engineered set of plans, including the review by Pesci.
And we added the word drainage plan and stormwater mitigation plan into that list because it wasn't in there.
Number
Number
2
one.
requires the conformity to the decision in the final
sorry.
plan set.
Sarah,
Yeah,
she's confused. That general regulatory miscellaneous conditions on number 1,
Yeah.
where they're listing all that stuff, the drainage plan and the stormwater mitigation plan are
Oh,
left off the list, and they
Okay.
have to be on there.
yeah.
So number 3 has been broken into 2 pieces on the final decision, so I don't know if it reflects that yet, but basically, the first talks about the fact that the project it has to remain under a common control and managed by a single entity,
Period. Right there.
and that there may be some related to the financing or tax credit. There may be some minor ownership structure that's different in those units, but again, the requirement is it's managed as a whole. So the next is about the project maintenance and management issues.
You see where it says to facilitate timely? That's
And-
going to be combined with the next one somehow?
So basically, the requirement is that there has to be a manager hired, and we know who that is based on the initial certificate of occupancy. And and I don't know where this ended up, there was discussion among
On Island?
people.
I think we're eliminating the to facilitate timely responses.
Yeah.
We're not getting rid of timely responses, but we're getting rid of this 32-unit concept.
Yep.
And you're saying at the first dwelling unit CO, there's going to be a manager on island.
Yeah, that's where we ended up.
Yep. Okay. The applicant.
Hold on a second, he's got a comment. That, we went bonkers about that in the office. I did, anyway.
Number 5
Wait.
is.
Hang on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Under normal lease up, that would be a really expensive way to do it because you're often phasing people over time, but because we would expect to have a oversubscribed waiting list and we'd essentially be occupying probably within 60 days of the CO, it's probably not a problem for us in terms of setting it up.
Because waiting for 32 units, for me, when I read this, before we split the paragraphs up and put it in with that other paragraph about before the first CO was issued, was not working for me. Because if you have somebody off island, which is what this indicated, until you got to 32 units, that's not happening. The boats don't go, the plane doesn't go, and you have 32 units with nobody here. That's not working. So we want somebody here as of the first CO to deal with whatever issues occur as they're becoming occupied.
The reality, what that means for us, because good people are hard to find, is most
There's
people know,
quite a lot of
it really
them here.
means that we're starting that search and hire someone probably 90, 120 days before to make sure that we're in compliance with that. So it is an expensive way to approach it, but we'll commit to that.
Personally, I'm not budging on that one,
Okay.
given the fact that the guy can't even get here
Yeah.
half the time in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the intent is for us to open the doors. We manage another building on site, so we understand the importance of having.
And you've had
online
somebody
staff.
here,
Yeah.
Pope and all those guys here all
Yes.
along.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Also-
that's what happened there.
Sorry.
Yep, sir.
I just want to remind you, we're adding in the construction mitigation measures somewhere here.
That was going at the very end.
Okay. All
After
right, I
20.
wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was down on,
Okay.
it'll be 21,
Okay, so item 5,
shall.
so we're striking the word agrees to and inserting the word shall impose and enforce through their written regulations, and there needs to be a reference to the management plan here.
Yep.
So we get to the items A through E, so there's no parking or storage of vehicles containing trailers, boats, attachments which exceed the length of the parking spaces on site. No on-site storage of boats, commercial scale vehicles on the site. No abandoned, inoperable, or unregistered vehicles.
Stay up there on B, Andrew. B
Yep.
added it doesn't preclude, Jill, I think you came up with it, it doesn't preclude parking of said trailers and whatnot, because a lot of the landscapers have their own trailers in their workforce on another location. I forget how I ended up with it, but I've got off-site of
We
such vehicles.
have something that's notwithstanding the above restriction, that the 32 spaces off-site could accommodate these vehicles. I mean, it
Or
may,
other town-owned property.
and it may require a permit from the town.
Yep.
Right.
It's not necessarily free parking. So any of the parking that might be made up in the town lot may have to be paid for, just so it's clear.
But we didn't want to have it indicated that we didn't want anybody living in there who was a landscaper with his own little trailer.
So no abandoned, inoperable, or unregistered vehicles, no matter who is there.
Right.
No exterior storage in the parking or lawn areas, other than the maintenance shed and the bike areas and the trash enclosures. Also, no satellite dishes, outdoor clothes drying lines, or other things that are exterior. Item 6 talks about the management of the parking through the sticker or the placard program. We reviewed that, and that would be included in our reference material on this particular condition. Item 7 is that the lease includes language making it clear that there's police and fire next door, so no one says later they didn't know that
So you
all
can't buy a
those-
house next to the airport and say you don't want airport noise.
all those sirens going off. Number 8 is this requires the management plan, including the parking management, the final plan to come to the planning board for final review and approval.
This word will, Sarah was changed to shall.
I'm changing that everywhere.
Okay.
9 talks about the COs issued on a unit-by-unit basis. And it's basically a technicality related to how the units are finished. Number 10 talks about the regulatory agreement between it and the town, which is required when you have affordable housing.
The word provided that was taken out,
That's 11.
yep, and reorganized. A condition of this approval is Laura followed it.
Item 12 references the fair housing guidelines that apply and talks about the 70% local
Is that 80%?
preference, which is the maximum. Even though I think as our experience has shown, these units are occupied by locals.
Number 9 has form instead of from.
Number 13, this is again, talks about the less than 80% units, so the 30 and 60s. It talks about a lottery, so those are granted through a lottery provision, similar to a 40B. Number 14 talks about any discretionary review, which allows for interpretation back from the planning board. Again, this is a fairly standard condition. If there's wording here that needs to be clarified. 15, this allows for the board to grant extensions to the deadlines without reholding a public hearing. Number 16 basically states the applicant needs to ensure strict compliance with all of the conditions. 17 talks about the board at sole discretion to reopen the hearing if it finds there's a material breach or that the town has materially failed to implement the mitigation measures, and the town and the planning board can impose additional conditions. 18 talks about the refusal of boards to accept gifts or easements, and again, that in those type of situations, the applicant can proceed forward for things that are completely out of their control. However, they will have to come back if they can't meet the material requirements. So that somewhat connected. 19 is the NRTA. It talks about how to encourage that use and excuse me, to locate stops nearby. And 20 is a standard condition that talks about when basically the project has begun, and that is a standard provision as well.
And then 21 was construction mitigation.
So construction mitigation was a concept discussed by the chair, which talks about limiting, I guess, certain hours
And no Sundays.
above and beyond the noise bylaw, and some specific performance measures about site control, about
Netting.
netting to contain materials and things that might be subject to.
Did you find the hours in your thing?
I can go over the hours.
The noise bylaw right now is 10 p.m. If there's exterior construction going on with a certain decibel level at 10:01, I know because I call it out my neighbor all summer long at 10:01, and they stop them. But we wanted to make sure that the construction, having lived next to Sherburne Commons, working until 1 o'clock in the morning with lights like football fields, allowed by the town manager, not by the bylaw, doesn't happen here. So, no Sundays was sort of sacrosanct. But there are certain hours, depending on what day of the week it is.
I think it changes in the summer.
I don't think that passed.
That's the core district.
Only the core district. This is not the core district. That's 7:30 in the core district. Not out here.
Okay, so
Yeah, go ahead.
it's unlawful for any person between the hours of 10 PM and 7 AM,
Right.
and that it's 7:30, between June 15th, the 7 changes to 7:30
Where?
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Okay.
Okay.
Until when? September 15th?
So between June 15th and September 15th,
Yep.
you can't start work before 7:30. And then it goes, the hours it ends is at 10. There's something about,
Guys,
and then on, between June 15th and September 15th, let's see, 10 PM.
make sure that's not just the core.
No, it's not the core. There's a different time, I think, power tools, mechanically powered saw, sander, grinder, drill, lawnmower, garden tool, similar device used outdoors. That's Monday through Saturday. You cannot do that before 7 o'clock, except 7:30 between June 15th and September 15th, and before 10 a.m. on Sunday.
Well, I'm suggesting there be no Sunday construction, and that the construction follows the bylaw. Construction hours follow the bylaw for exterior construction. And that they put up that, mesh around the construction site, so it doesn't blow all over like I ended up with stuff in my front yard from Sherburne. So I've been here, and the HGC has approved a lot of these temporary mesh construction things.
Yeah, he's probably going to do fencing and.
I was gonna say
you know,
something,
site-
and you just wrap that
You're gonna want
stuff with
site
that mesh.
control anyway, right?
Yeah. Because you don't want to have to go chase your stuff all over the place either. So, anybody else have anything else on the mitigation?
And Jonathan had mentioned maybe, an overall construction management plan might be part of what's submitted, and it
Yeah.
could include these things. If there's any other ideas by the board, now would be the time.
Jonathan, do you have anything else to add to that list, or?
No, it's really a matter of what specific concerns the board might have. Oftentimes in these sorts of management plans, you'll see a provision prohibiting, dust coming out onto the public way.
That's what I was getting at.
Right, but from construction trucks. So,
Like a tracking pad type thing?
yeah, or wheel wash or whatever. I mean, I think it would be up to the construction manager to decide how to accomplish that, but just so you don't have a lot of debris coming out onto the public way. Cleaning up the construction site at the end of each day, making sure there isn't a bunch of litter out there.
Yeah. So it becomes unsightly. Plus the number. Somebody's got to have a number of, if there's a problem over there, somebody has to have a number posted with the police or whoever.
Yeah, that's usually part of the plan.
Part of the management plan.
Okay.
So there's some contact for neighbors as well as us and the staff.
Well, why don't we submit a construction plan within 6 months, the same as we're doing our engineered site plan?
Okay. Construction management plan?
Sure.
Yep, okay. And then the condition is the no Sunday and then the follow the bylaw.
Right.
I don't imagine it's an issue with this site, but sometimes there are preferred trucking routes. I don't know if there is or isn't
There's only one way in
for
and one way
construction
out right
vehicles. So,
until they open Waite Drive, which is part of this whole thing.
Well, it could be, that could be a way to, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, it comes in through Waite Drive,
Yeah.
from the other side,
Right,
from Old South
Old
Road
South
side.
Road.
right.
And keeps it away from coming
That's
down
actually a
Tacoma.
really good idea.
Because they have to get the road together anyway, all the way through to our parking lot, and it just comes in that way through the construction guys that are already parked over there. Yeah, Ed
Yep,
needs to see that plan as well.
Right.
Good point.
Right, that's what I'm suggesting, yeah.
Yeah.
My question is about Sundays. I'm not sure how strongly the board feels about it, but sometimes it's the one day to get caught up, especially when all the subs aren't on site. If you're behind schedule to get organized, be on site, there's usually not a lot that happens, but they could be short days like a 10 to 4 or something of that nature. The
What day is that?
on Sundays. The idea is that with the tax credit projects, you sort of have make or break deadlines, that if you don't hit your delivery dates on your construction, it can cost you substantial subsidy. So building in ways, especially on a tough access space like Nantucket,
We're locked in again. It's 8 o'clock.
building in ways to try to catch up on schedule can be important for the success of the project.
Personally speaking, I'm not budging on the no Sundays. If they want to get over there and they want to move stuff around, they're not running heavy equipment, they're not beeping themselves silly. I went through this. I know how disruptive it is, and it was about 50 feet from my house. So I know how disruptive that is, especially if it's construction during the summer. The only day off that most of these people have is Sunday with their families during the summer, because everybody's busting their butts. And if you're listening to beeping and dust is coming and all this construction power equipment's going, because you've got a lot of steel going on, you've got a lot of heavy equipment over there, that is insanity here, when we only have 90 days to actually open our windows. So I don't want disturbance there. If somebody wants to be over there puttering around and sort of setting up for Monday and stuff like that, I don't think that's a big problem. It's the construction, it's the beeping, it's the heavy equipment, it's the trains, it's the metal, it's all that stuff going on a Sunday. I'm having a problem with that.
Madam Chair, is there a way to say that verbally, that says that you won't be using any heavy machinery or power tools, so that it still allows for the applicant to prepare the site and get ready
Get
for
their
the
act
week?
together for
If
Monday.
it's not going to be a disturbance from a noise
It's not,
factor.
nothing verbal here, it's in writing.
Right.
Yeah, just exterior.
I don't care what you do inside, because we don't have any jurisdiction over that necessarily, that you can't be inside doing something.
Yeah.
So long as it's not windows open, so long as it's not heavy equipment, so long as it's not outside. Even after 10 o'clock at night, you can be inside.
This is my builder. over
I
here.
know, you can be inside after 10 o'clock at night, so long as the windows aren't open and you can't hear it. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was the option of perhaps on a case-by-case basis, if there was an opportunity or a need on a particular Sunday to do a particular task, if we could notify the neighbors and or the town, or if there was a process for that.
Like a
I wish that had
delivery or
happened.
something like that.
A delivery is one thing, so long as there's not pallets being thrown on the ground with, because you've got a lot of hardscape as well. And that stuff can make a lot of noise when it's dropped. So I don't know, Barry?
Yep. So through you to Andrew, do you remember what we did with the core district during the summertime? Because what your concern is emulating, I think, what we already addressed back in what we were trying to do with the core.
It never passed.
No, I know that, but still, with some of the bigger projects, we still asked them to do it. And
What
so
what
I
we
think-
have is that seasonal
Right,
requirement.
there you
so
go.
It's
That's-
the June to
15th to
September.
September
Yeah.
15th. That's still Sundays.
And hold on, do you remember what the context of that was?
So there's no exterior construction during that time at all.
Okay.
So it has to be painting and,
Inside
minor
stuff,
All right.
minor stuff.
So would,
Landscaping.
instead of saying no Sundays, period, why not put into place what we already have, which I think addresses your concern, because I heard about the summer, by using that, and then if there is something that comes before you during the summertime, you'd have to get special exemption from this board to make
Extenuating
that happen.
circumstances.
Yeah, extenuating circumstances.
It could rain the whole time and you
But
can't do a
does
pour.
that, would that, I think, and because during the winter time, I think that it does make sense to allow you to have that ability, and it's consistent with how we've tracked with other projects in the past. I mean, if the intent with this board is to do that for every project that comes along in the future, then I think that needs to be a policy decision.
No,
But,
building a house doesn't have that.
Yeah, but, okay, but where do you start to draw that line at?
64 units in 3 big buildings is a
Where do you start to
entirely
draw-
different issue.
Where do you start to draw that line at? That's the key that I'm arriving at. So as one person on this board, I think that's a fair and consistent procedure for dealing with them on this.
I don't know
really
where
do.
that ended up on Sundays. There's no exterior construction on Sundays at all.
Right, well, you and I are
The
gonna.
interior, I don't care.
Right, and that's.
I thought Barry was suggesting no exterior construction on Sundays between June 15 and September 15.
Right,
Yeah,
as
that's
is
sort of
consistent.
what I'm thinking along
Yeah,
the
as is
lines.
consistent.
The problem that you have is in the wintertime, especially.
You're gonna lose my vote, you're down to
always
less than
something
4.
All right, can we
slowing
listen
things
to that?
down.
Sorry.
Plus you have, people are not out, outside as much in the winter. You have slowdown issues in the winter at the same time.
September's not winter.
We've got, I'm not necessarily agreeing with June
Okay.
15th to September 15th verbatim. I'm just trying to make a general point about winter versus summer, construction. Now, we've got the hospital. Are they working on Sundays? I'm just asking.
I have
Are they
no
working on
idea.
I have
Sundays?
no idea, I've never.
I
out
don't
there.
know, actually. They're not, okay.
I live right next
I'm just saying, there's a lot of lights
I
on, I don't know.
I
if they
will,
work.
I will tell you, I did
Do
drive.
they work at Stop and Shop on Sunday? Just asking.
I have no idea.
No
I'm just
idea.
trying to
I
come
think
up
they
with
worked, yeah, I think they
reasons.
They
worked
were
all the
inside.
time.
That went up really fast. They were inside on Sundays.
Nonetheless,
Yeah.
but they can still do interior work.
Right.
That's all.
I didn't say anything about interior, just the exterior.
I mean,
But-
I don't see, the gentleman brought up about contacting the neighbors if they're gonna work on a Sunday. I don't see that being that easy to do. I think
Yeah.
that there needs to definitely be a phone number that everybody has.
Right.
Like, people call me on Sunday, I can tell you that.
They call
Every
me all
Sunday.
the time.
So, there's a way, that has to happen. As far as maybe developing a relationship about that and sort of how things are sort of panning out, it may work. It may be not a big deal, to communicate with, okay, we have a truck coming this Sunday, we gotta get it unloaded. And let me wanna bring up one more thing, Linda, is staging. Are you guys gonna be able to do everything on site? I think probably, that hasn't been brought up yet, but I just
Use the
figured I'd
parking
ask.
lot to stage.
You're not gonna need to have any off-site
We should be able to
anything.
stage on.
Yeah, because you got that whole parking lot. That's the
Okay.
last thing to be done.
Is the fire station gonna have these construction
They don't have to come
restrictions?
to us.
So next door, they're gonna be building,
See, this is the thing, in the same airspace. So there's a good point to make, too.
But they're removed from the residences, at least on Tacoma and Amelia and those guys. They've got the views across
Well,
the
this is
street.
the only one we
But
control.
that's different than
Right.
this is like
Yeah,
out
but
You
there.
don't wanna handicap
Somebody else is
beyond
building in
reasonable.
Monomoy and they can do something else. I mean, this is the only one we have in front of us. We can't, bootstrap.
We're not happy
you
about
guys
that
bootstrap
construction
on
schedule
the
either.
fire department.
So where,
I just don't wanna be saddled with complaints that are emanating from the fire station construction if it's not.
not you guys.
Well, if
Our
there's nobody,
construction.
there's nobody working, then we'll know that it's not you.
Good.
So where did we end up here? I'm not happy with June 15th through September 15th. People are out in their yards on May 15th, and they're out in their yards right through October 15th. Especially if it was as warm as it has been. So I don't mind any interior, the other thing is, you brought up when the freight boat doesn't run, and you're expecting something coming over, or you got the barge coming in, and it doesn't run, and the trucks are all piled in here on that freight boat on a Sunday.
That's what happened.
Driving them out there is fine. I mean, that's not construction. And as Andrew read, the power equipment, the heavy equipment, the cranes, the metal, all that stuff, that is construction. If you're setting up because you're getting deliveries because the freight boat didn't run for 3 days, nobody's gonna say anything about that. So, where did we end up with this? Obviously, the hours are as the bylaw states. I'm still struggling with Sundays. Where did we end up with that?
We're having discussion at this point.
No
And there was a few-
exterior construction?
There's a few differing opinions on that right now. That's where we left off at.
So
So,
if we're talking about, so we're talking, I think, generally about exterior construction. Everyone has said that interior construction is fine.
right.
So it's the exterior operating power tools,
Heavy equipment, beeping, and all that stuff.
yeah.
minus
Except for the
delivery.
sole purpose of
Unloading a trailer.
unloading.
Yeah, that's fine.
You gotta be able to unload a trailer.
Once the trailer's unloaded, it's done. Takes you, what, a half an
There's
hour
stuff
with a
coming out,
forklift
you
or
can
whatever
deal
you
with
got
that.
over there, and it's
And
done.
painting and things like that, that aren't
That's not construction.
operating tools is okay?
I think hand tools are probably okay.
Not
No,
grinders.
Well, like a-
manual hand tool.
A nail gun, that's gonna have the same,
No.
yeah.
Yeah. Any power tool.
You know, one thing, can
What the
we add,
bylaw says.
no boom boxes? Because how many times I've go to a site, guys have their car doors open, cranked up
I've been there.
maximum, and they're painted.
Everything that
I
could
mean,
go
it's
wrong.
way louder than the bulldozer.
I think they're gonna have to police that themselves. They're far enough away that that should be okay. I got more noise coming from the residents behind me than I would from these guys.
That's a noise
Trying to
bylaw
make
violation
everybody
anyway,
happy.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
if it's got a certain decibel beyond the property line, that is a noise violation.
Correct.
And they've got a number, they can call up and say, guys, can you turn it down? I mean, that's all they have to do is work with the guys that are doing the construction. They're not here to make enemies of anybody, because it's gonna make their lives miserable as well as the neighbors' lives miserable. So if somebody's got their radio on too loud, especially after 10 o'clock at night, that's when I call, 10:01. Okay, so no exterior construction on Sunday except for what's needed
Loading,
to.
unloading,
Unloading, painting, landscaping, as long as there's no blowers, please. I got one of those behind me. All right, so we sort of
Well,
have
we
that
won't be
under
cutting
control.
stone.
No cutting stone, no. So that pretty much does it, guys? That was the last thing.
I have
Okay.
a question, Madam.
John?
Moderator.
No, that's the moderator.
Madam Chair.
He's over there.
Have we discussed anything about insurance requirements from the town,
That's
minimums?
the town.
Well, I'm just curious, do we have any idea that, looking at, it's town-owned property, it's gonna be leased out for 99 years, is there a hold harmless agreement?
That wouldn't be
Any-
with us. That would be, the selectmen even haven't got their agreement done yet for those guys.
Okay, so it's inappropriate to ask?
You can ask, but it's not in our purview.
There is a draft lease and development agreement that is not finalized, but they all carry insurance requirements. And all of our financing will also require insurance requirements for our contractor and all the subs
All
and
liability.
bonding and all that, so
Okay.
the town will be covered.
Any other questions from the group up here? Andrew, anything to add before we go to the public? Okay.
Yeah, before you do, there is one thing I'm gonna say. If I may?
Yeah.
All right, so I think there was a lot of concerns that were raised at our last meeting, which were duly noted at this point. I think we heard a lot of those concerns. I think one thing that was a little bit problematic was as many of those concerns that were put out there, there was no concrete data under which to support some of those concerns. We hear what you're saying, but the three chief concerns that seem to come up, and you can certainly chime in on any of these, but it was the density of the project, groundwater, and then various components of the traffic, including generation and parking. So I think respectfully, we've heard public testimony on these things, so
I was
as
gonna
we
say
open
all
our
this
meeting
marriage.
tonight, I'd like us to move into, see if there's new territory that we need to cover.
I was
beyond
gonna say,
this.
I already had that all planned
Oh,
to say.
good, so sorry. So sorry, but.
To reiterate, we did hear, there are probably 40 or 50 people in this room, and we have the diehards back there. And we did hear all this stuff already. We have, as far as the board is concerned, we've dealt with the 32 versus 32. I think we responded and gave everybody an opportunity at the last meeting. So if you have anything new, or you have anything that you would like to add to the construction mitigation, or anything that would make this more palatable to you guys, let us know now. I know it's still at the HDC. I believe it's up at the HDC tomorrow night, guys? Okay. So our decision has left it pretty much up to the HDC to make their decision. If it looks like beyond a certain percentage of change, they have to come back here. But right now, they gotta deal with the HDC, and a lot of the concerns the last time were really HDC-based or Board of Selectmen-based when they do the agreement with the Board of Selectmen. Sarah, when is that supposed to take place, your agreements with the Selectmen? Some final memorandum of agreement?
Yeah, I thought it'd be done by now, but, we're substantially down the path. I
Okay.
think it'll be helpful now, because a lot of it is what ifs, so, getting through the hearing processes, I think it'll help nail things down.
Okay. So you do have the Selectmen, you do have the HDC. Does anybody in the public wanna have a comment? You gotta come up and sit in front of this thing. Jeff, identify yourself and your address.
Hi, Jeff Smith, 6 Meacham Lane.
Shimmy,
Shimmy.
shimmy.
I just had a couple of quick
You know
comments.
how I hate that.
I was having a root canal at Dr. Miner's office the other day. Really pleasant experience. And
Not that fair.
I talked to him about Amelia Drive and kind of what the plans are. I've talked to Mike Burns about the widening. And you guys have all been working on that for a couple years now.
Yeah.
We don't know about that stuff. We don't know about what's behind the scenes. Dr. Miner was totally shocked that the taking of the road was going to happen, and it's for the betterment of everybody. I would just like to see a little bit more public outreach. I don't know how to do that. I don't have any great ideas. I've watched Nat and Andrew on Geno TV, which is super helpful. But there's like
20 hits.
there's like 12 of us that watch that.
Only on the
Nat
first
actually
one.
watched it
Second one's like
200
90.
times, so there's only 12 people that watch it. So that's just a challenge for you guys. You guys are doing a lot of great work out here, so we'd like to know what's happening 3 years from now.
Stay right there for a second.
Yeah.
Andrew, the 5 regular board members are on NP in EDC, where the Old South Road corridor, we're running about once every month right now. Everything Mike told you is in public meetings at
Right,
the
right.
Planning Commission. So we've seen, and there's a whole packet he can give you about the rotary, the widening, the center
Yeah.
things, all that stuff. That's all
I'd love to
public
see that
knowledge.
disseminated out a little bit more. It's exciting stuff, and nobody knows about
It
it.
is, we haven't gotten
Where
to
are
the
these new
final
rotaries
plan.
going? I know, but nobody
there.
else does.
But if you look at those,
It's
it's
just a
there.
comment, Linda.
I know, but there is ways of getting it, and at some point when we do finalize it, it goes up on the website probably for public comment.
Yep.
So we're rolling down that, we're still in the study stage, so we haven't gotten that far yet. So that is stuff is gonna be out there.
Awesome.
And
That's good.
And unfortunately, not everything makes the paper that we talk about at times, so just, it's no offense to Josh.
Josh doesn't like those planning commission meetings.
But, again, not everything, there are certain pieces of public dissemination we don't control either, and I know a lot of people turn to that. And sometimes having to, believe me, there are times with Board of Selectmen meetings, I don't necessarily want to watch them, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to hit the fast forward.
That's a
key, but I know
root
that-
canal.
Yeah.
But that, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just have to weather that process with certain things, but I would probably dare say too, sometimes just poking your head in the planning office or grabbing one of us and
Well,
saying,
he went to talk
hey,
to
what's
Mike,
happening?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking
No,
for me
and I-
personally, but I
Yeah.
just love what you guys are doing at Geno TV and a few other things. Just
You just
keep it
love
up.
minutia, I know that.
Keep it up.
So what's your second point?
Second point is, no parking on both sides of Tacoma was proposed. Can we just get that going now and put some signs up to get people trained? Is that reasonable?
Well, you gotta talk
It's
to,
only
you gotta talk to Tommy Arena and some of the guys that are actually on Tacoma.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they were over jazzed about not being able to park if they have a party at their house on the south side.
I think it's
So
for the
we had
greater
pretty
good
much,
and- well, whatever
pretty
you
much
guys
stuck it
choose.
on the north side.
Yeah. Whatever you guys choose,
I
can we
think
get that
the north
rolling
is
now?
more important
Can,
than anything,
Yeah.
personally.
Andrew, is there any just timeframes to meet that?
Well, we can, again, once you've made a final decision, we can get that started right away. You need to decide if it's gonna be one side only or both sides, and you need to talk about the limits if you want. The limits right now are through the limitations of the public way. So
Okay.
if you want the other side, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, so
I
what's
don't
gonna,
think you should have the south side.
I understand that, but what's gonna happen is what happened at the brewery. We're gonna have,
But it happens now when there's a funeral reception or something at the fairgrounds, and we
understand
don't
that,
wanna have
yeah.
everybody ticketed to go to the
I-
funeral.
very good point.
So
We'll
that's
leave
why,
that to you guys.
yeah. So
But
right now,
whatever you do,
north
it'd be
side.
nice to get that going now with the DPW.
right side, north side.
Okay.
Okay. I know he's got one more.
No, I would just like to see some lighting, better bike path there eventually. I'm sure that's part of the plan. But, let's make the neighborhood a little bit better for everybody. Going to be a lot of people
Safety.
using this thing.
Safety.
So, the other one is all these small lots on the bottom. It's going to be great to have a bunch of houses there. Talk is possibly not having 9 curb cuts, but having them enter through the back.
That's still on the plan.
Right. Is there going to be another cut through on Waite Drive to access all those, or are they going to be through the parking lot? I just don't see how that's going to happen.
Andrew?
Now, that's actually a good point, that we should probably make an accommodation
On
that
the
should,
road when they build it.
that should
So-
probably be included as part of the condition to allow that easement to be relocated through there, because it will impact some of the parking spaces or the island or something, so.
Yeah, it's going to be a
Yep.
heck of a lot safer.
Yeah, we got that.
Not having all those curb cuts, but I just don't see how it's possible right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I just have
Oh, nice try, Aaron. Come next.
All right, Joanne Skokin, 20 Towns Way. Are these projects going to be constructed simultaneously or close to the fire station? Can we
We
try
have
to?
no
I mean,
idea.
what do you think?
We have no idea.
What do you think?
I don't even know, because they don't even have the money yet.
Right.
They don't even have the
We have to
money for
vote
the fire
tomorrow. All right.
department yet.
I mean, it would be nice to get it all done in
I think they're
these
gonna be
3 years.
inevitably
You know, like,
overlapping.
let's just get them done.
Andrew, have you heard anything about the fire department? They don't have the
There's no
bond, they don't
abutters.
have the money.
I'm not against working on Sunday.
I have not, no, I don't,
You don't have any idea?
No.
not yet.
All right, the construction mitigation thing, the bike path on Fairgrounds
Fairgrounds.
is right close. I'm glad to hear there'll be a fence, but it's a huge temptation, to the kids who ride that bike path.
It's
No, I'm just concerned more about,
No,
it's
an
so
attra-
close.
It's an
to the
attractive nuisance.
It's so close to the bike path,
Yep.
the construction site, just to make sure there's a fence there.
Yep.
And then I'm just going to say again, if Waite Drive and Amelia Drive were one ways, it would help a lot. There's my, thanks.
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 Okay, Aaron. Let's identify yourself for the tape.
Sure. Erin Carson, 6 Cash Lot
And the
Lane.
last one was Joanne Skokin. Joanne, what's your address? What is it? Tom's, that's right.
Regarding Amelia Drive, is there a proposal to eliminate the street parking? Is that part? I'm only asking because okay.
Make it wider so they can.
It's an option, so I think there's a need to keep some street parking there.
Okay.
So the current width is not adequate to do the 2 travel lanes and the parking.
Sure.
So if the 2-way street system is kept, then there has to be a widening of the traveled way, which would probably involve the elimination of the tree lawn between the sidewalk and the traveled way.
Okay.
So the curb would have to be moved backwards towards the sidewalk. Obviously, where there's existing trees, we don't want to take those out. We tried to do it in a manner, again, with the 2-lane option, to try to focus on areas where there aren't existing trees, so there might not be on-street parking in front of those areas. It might be just where there currently isn't trees. Again, so that's one option. The other option is if we keep the existing roadway tracked where it is, then that would be a one-way issue, right? So you would leave parking on one side and then have one-way travel in the remaining part of the road. Or the parking would have to be removed
Or, Aaron,
for a
it looks
two,
like
for a
that,
2-lane.
around the trees.
Okay. So if
Parking, tree,
Sure.
parking, tree, like Andrew, we did over there on
Right.
Pleasant.
If the parking were to be removed in that latter case, where would those cars park, I guess?
They're
Are
supposed
they-
to be parking on their property.
Right, no, I guess I'm wondering,
That's what it's
are they gonna then be parking on Waite, and we're gonna create more parking lots to accommodate those cars? That's just, like, I'm just wondering if that's what that will come to.
The,
Stop.
well, one option is, I mean, the bank created a parking area. So, one, if that happens, there probably would have to be some connection through the lots on Amelia into the town parking area.
Okay.
So,
And that would be like basically creating more parking though, right? Because we determined that that existing lot is pretty much at capacity.
the existing lot needs to, again, be managed and probably be priced. It's,
And lined.
it may have to be expanded. There's additional land, again, in the CN zoning district, the same zoning district, over there that could be used for parking. Doesn't have a designated use yet. There's over 2 acres on the one side of Amelia. There's another 2 acres on the opposite side. So there's additional land there.
Okay. And in order for the final certificate of occupancy to be issued, just the taking of Amelia needs to be done, not the actual implementation. Isn't that what I saw in the decision?
Yep.
So it just goes to town meeting, everyone says, yes, let's take it. And that meets that sort of stipulation. It's not like the parking has to be completed, or it's just the actual taking, which is the vote at town meeting.
It's not a town meeting vote. It's
Not
going to
town
be,
meeting.
It's going through the county, isn't it?
it'll be done as a county road.
They don't need
Okay.
town meeting.
So no one needs, okay, so the decision's been basically been made.
About,
Not about,
the
like,
taking, not
yes,
the
Yeah.
yes,
solution.
got it, okay. Thank you. Are these buildings gonna have central air conditioning?
Yes,
Okay, so there's gonna be no window units?
everybody does.
No.
Okay.
No window
Okay, yeah, okay. And,
Stay right there for a second. Don't you have the flat piece in the middle? You've got the angles of the roof, and isn't all the utilities going in the middle on the top of the building?
Yeah, the heat pumps, well, depends on where we're ending up with
Yeah, if you go with heat pumps or not.
okay, not like many splits, though?
No,
Well,
Yes, mini splits?
Yes, yeah.
no.
So there'll be 110 mini splits, or 112?
You better put that before the HTC, because they're going after every mini split they can find that was put up illegally, because they're horrible.
The current, well,
why are they horrible?
exterior,
They got,
Let's-
Are you
let's-
kidding?
Let's not debate the issue here, but
Okay.
thank you.
we've had a few have to take them off.
But no window units, and definitely not. No. Okay. And is there a water and sewer connection fee for each unit? Is the developer paying,
That's up
100?
to the selectmen.
Yeah, that's on
Okay.
us.
it
They haven't
is,
decided yet, or?
there is, it's on a unit-by-unit basis.
Okay.
And there's, under their policy, affordable units are charged less.
Okay.
There's a full charge for the market units, and then there's a reduction in the units that are permanently affordable.
The renters aren't paying that.
Right, the developer, okay. And are there pets permitted on the property? Is that something we can? There are.
generous dog policy.
Is that something we can, like, negotiate, or that makes me really uncomfortable?
As part of the management plan, if there's a discussion you all want to have about pets, now is the time to do it.
Okay.
I think we should have.
I mean, I'm a
discussion
pet
about
owner.
it.
I like to consider myself a responsible pet owner, but I don't know. With my
I mean, is that?
64
neighbors have
dogs,
anything
are
to
you
say
kidding?
about
That's
that, but.
something that, I mean, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, we did talk about it with some of the other ones, and I know we talked about it with the housing authority. We don't have a pets. We have service dogs.
Is that something that can be part of, where did
Sarah's right.
She's over there, hanging out.
the manager on site? Yeah, I don't think we should have no dogs, I don't think we can do that. I'm talking about part of the manager, on-site manager, like, what is the threshold of a problem dog? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's pretty hard to put on a piece of paper.
It's not picking up
Well,
after
you know,
yourself.
Just thinking, I mean,
I mean, it has to be some kind of, the person that's the manager is not gonna be a complete moron. They're
well, I'm
gonna
just.
know
Running
it's a
loose,
problem.
barking.
Thinking workforce housing, these people are working 12 hours a day. They're not coming home to walk their dogs
Yeah, and things
several
got
times a
dark.
day.
Oh, my God.
I don't know. And I personally would feel comfortable, I just feel like, I mean, I'm an animal lover, but like no domestic pets. Cats, I mean,
We did, as part of the RFP, one of the advantages to our proposal for election was the generous pet policy. A lot of questions to that effect about, we want to treat the working force of the island the same as anybody else gets treated. If people love their pets, and that is particularly on the island, it's a pet-friendly place, and it's part of the culture. So it seems like, it seems sort of like a different standard for the people just because they're renting in a rent-restricted unit than it is for someone that is a full market rate or owns their own home. That being
Provided you
said,
had intelligent pet owners, you don't.
Can you let him finish, please?
yeah. That being said, we do have as part of our management plan, there will be a pet policy in there. We did submit a draft outline as part of one of the earlier pieces because that was a question that came as part of the public comment question at an earlier meeting. And so you have an opportunity to review that plan. Like we haven't identified a dog walking area and other things like that yet, which will need to happen as part of the final management plan and the landscaping. So that because within 6 months we have to submit the final management plan, you have an opportunity to review those requirements and make any comments to make sure that you feel it's appropriate.
Can you give us a general idea of what your pet policy was?
We basically said we'll allow the biggest pets that our insurance company will allow.
The hell's that?
The company. Well, in a lot of properties, we have blanket policies that cover the portfolio, and these are small dogs, like 40-pound dogs. We didn't think that was going to fly here,
Labs.
generally speaking. So we were looking at special policies that allow us to do full-size labs and things of that nature. We do have non-aggressive dogs. You have noise issues. If it becomes an issue for the residents, it becomes an issue for the manager. It's not in our own own interest to have, a cacophony of,
Barking
animals
dogs.
across the whole property. So it is a problem that you have in any neighborhood. I mean, you have people that go away in their $1 million homes and they leave their dog tied up all day and it barks all day. These are just one of those living near people kind of issues that you have to deal with. We do have more control to deal with them in a community like this than you would in potentially a subdivision.
What do you think the percentage of 64 units and how many dogs there'll be?
64.
I doubt it.
I doubt it.
I
Cats.
mean, this is like the park and stuff.
I
mean,
would
don't
really
know.
defer
30,
to
40?
management. I wouldn't be surprised by
I don't
30
know.
dogs. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, now everybody got the little baby pocket dogs now, put in a
Yeah.
basket. I mean, it's hard to say. It's like a car. They're all different sizes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this didn't even come up, but I'm glad you have something in your plan already.
Yeah, we have a draft plan. We haven't limited the number of pets, but I think that's something we'll need to look at.
Yeah.
No ferrets, no monkeys.
Yeah, no,
Ferrets aren't allowed legally.
Good.
Yeah, no reptiles.
None of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know where there was a pig in the house. So.
Just make sure you get the little
Inside.
poopy things all over the place.
Yeah, the grab bags and things like that. Right. And I mean, we do have the fairgrounds bike path too, and there's a risk that people will be like, this would be a nice area to walk my dog, and there'll be a lot of monitoring that'll have to happen.
Okay. Anything else, Aaron?
no, I just, I appreciate what Attorney Alger said, and I certainly think that quality of life will, could potentially be significantly impacted negatively by allowing just,
Let her finish.
I mean,
Quick question.
yeah.
How do you feel about the Sunday issue? We didn't ask anyone because we're trying to accommodate what we think you're thinking. When Joanne said she didn't care about Sunday, I'm kind of thinking, well, what do you think about the Sunday thing?
I mean, we're year-round residents. I mean, I'm outside on Sunday.
I know what it's
I don't
like,
know
Nat.
what-
I lived right
no,
next to it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Because this is
Yeah, I guess my other
to bed.
is,
an odd decision,
it's-
to have to make
sure.
out of town. It's not really out of town.
Sure.
It's the new town. We're thinking about it.
I assume that all of the subs are being brought from off island. Is that correct? And if so, are they commuting daily?
You got subs
So
coming
I guess
from
I
off
would
island?
just, are they coming
Or
over on
anyhow.
Probably
Sunday
gonna have
just?
some housing here
Let
for
him
a
answer.
while.
Yeah, probably a mix.
Okay.
Because you don't have to do prevailing wage and bonding and all that stuff because you're a private contractor.
We're right now, we're presuming we do have to look for prevailing wage and on the financing side.
Why?
Because federally insured mortgages require prevailing wage.
You got state funds? You got state funds, right, coming? That's what you're after? Yeah, then you got no choice.
Thank you for asking. I mean, I guess I would say that, just again, the pets, I think, is more paramount to me than the Sundays. I mean, I work on Sundays sometimes, whether it's just, whatever, so I don't know, but
Well,
I
that's a
think the
dead
pets
issue.
is, yeah, sort of a,
Because I'll vote against it.
that's it. Thank you.
And I think that it's just a point worth bringing up, because if they do get some things done on Sundays, the project gets done faster.
I thought of that, but I didn't bring
You
it
know?
up. because-
No,
That's
no. Anybody else want to talk?
duly noted.
Oh, yeah.
Board of one.
No, you don't have to
Jeff
just
Smith,
vote.
6 Meacham Lane. Commercial vehicles, no
Mashimi.
commercial vehicles. Mashimi. No commercial vehicles.
Spell your name, pronounce your new road.
I like Meacham.
It's a new road.
He
It
just,
is.
whatever.
It means forever in Wampanoag. Really neat. There's no commercial vehicles in the 81 spots or 114 spots or whatever. How many
Those are your
spots?
trucks.
No, commercial residence.
Your truck.
Is-
You
that's what I
drive your
heard.
truck home. You can park your truck in your
I don't think
space.
that that's what that was about.
Got it.
No, it's
okay.
box
have to
trucks,
fit in the space.
trailers.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So commercial plates are fine.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. Yikes.
Anybody else? You're awfully quiet back in that corner. You sat through all 4 hours of the last one.
Chris Conway, Fort Catchall, Lyon, and I have a lot of concerns, but I don't see this 32 off-street parking spots working. I just see we're losing parking on Amelia Drive. That's going to end up there.
Not necessarily.
I mean, I walk to Amelia from Catchall. It's right there. I mean, we
We're
might
going to
not
make
lose
it
it.
wider.
If you widen it,
Yeah.
yeah, but you're probably going to lose spots there with trees. You know, the workforce housing, these people here, they're going to have work trailers. Those are going to be parked there constantly, right?
On the street?
Yeah. Trailers,
I don't know.
boat trailers, that's all allowed.
I don't think they're going to get in the street because they're longer than the regular standard parking space.
I heard earlier that utility trailers would be allowed. on 30.
The intent is that they're in the actual parking lot with the other commercial vehicles,
The
not on the
200
street.
one.
Oh, the town,
The town
okay.
park.
Yeah.
Which you guys have, we've all noted it's kind of at capacity.
But we
So
haven't
this-
expanded.
This is going to be overflow from there. If it's already at capacity, this is going to be overflow.
Andrew?
Parking there, again, it needs to be properly striped. It needs to have its aisles fixed. There's additional capacity in surrounding land. It's very roughed in right now, and there is no management there. It's all free parking right now, so.
Well, and if
free
it's going to
for
be
all.
paid parking, then people are just going to come here and park free. I don't see these 32 spots as,
Stop.
being, that should count towards the required parking here. I think they're going to be chewed up right away.
Andrew?
And the solution is, well, we'll build these guys another parking lot. We'll give them more land, and we'll pay for another parking lot for these guys.
Well, it's not just for them. It's for everybody out there.
Well, I mean, it is for them, because they don't have required parking on their lot. So we are building it for them.
I don't want to keep going back and
I
forth.
know,
This is
we
a
beat
town
this one to
project.
death
It's
before.
sponsored by the town of Nantucket. It's not them.
It is
It's a-
kind of them. I mean, they're building
Hold on,
it.
let him
They're
finish.
collecting rent
Let
for
him
100 years.
finish.
So, the land, as again, we've talked about it in the decision, it's the town of Nantucket's project. The town of Nantucket set this density. They included it in the RFP. And, again, they're responsible to accommodate if in fact, there is a problem. You don't have a traffic report that says it is a problem. You very well could find that the 82 spaces is adequate.
Well,
And we'll have to
that
see, otherwise
at the
it's
last meeting.
speculation. We've had a lot of speculation on a lot of projects, so.
But also remember, we can open it, if this is a problem, we can open it any time.
but by opening it, it means we're going to have to build in a parking lot. We're going to have to build another parking lot.
We're going to be
for these
probably
guys.
doing that anyway as part of the Wait Drive, because we know that this needs improvement. This is a free-for-all back here. and we have enough land to go ahead and do that. And we know that we want the people having a party in their apartment over there, they're gonna have to park someplace else. And that's what I'm saying. We know that this is inevitable, that that's
Why-
gonna
Why isn't
happen.
it on the plan somewhere? a master
Because it's
plan?
outside of the scope of this project at the moment. However, the selectmen heard us loud and clear. I've spoken to at least 3 of them. They heard us. They know that they, like every other applicant that appears before the planning board with a set of conditions, and there's 19 pages here, with a set of conditions, if they violate a condition or a condition is not working, it's going to get reopened whether they like it or not. They don't have any control over that, and they don't have any control over the conditions that we put in here. It's a kind of an interesting situation where one board is sort of controlling what another board does, because they are the applicant. You won't see this very often
It's
in here.
interesting.
Can I just bring up one point?
Yep.
Listening to this gentleman talk about this, all I can think of is the bus to the boat. My brain is back 4 years ago with the lot, Highline, town lot, switching it out here, seeing how it worked. Everybody clogging up the empty lot that we think we own.
Or Brant
you know,
Point.
For free, and the Brant Point streets and all that stuff. It works. That's why it's full. Doesn't mean it's full, sorry, we gotta build a new fleet center. It's a work in progress. This summer, there was big changes down at Greenhound that, you know, you may have not noticed, you may have, all of a sudden, there's a little thing. And Highline's buses are now doing it. It's gonna be evolving all the time, this land out here. You know, someday 2 fairgrounds is gonna move forward, there's gonna all of a sudden be lots of land. It's gonna change. It's not stagnant, okay? The airport has opened up their parking lot for more workers. They're dying to park in that lot because they don't have anyone flying anymore. It's flip-flops from the airport to the boat. You know, the new airport is Straight Wharf, so it's gonna change. There's gonna be places for these people to park those unusually odd vehicles. I get what you're saying, on-street parking's very difficult for a trailer. But there's gonna be improvements to this parking area out here, whether it's for the people that work off island, whether it's for us going to the boat, whether it's for these people or others. It's gonna get improved. And there's gonna be charges, at some point the off-island vehicles are gonna pay something, just like we have to pay to park on the Cape. We have to accommodate that over here. So at some point in time, that's gonna change.
And Chris, the
understand that, but-
practical thing about the trailers and the 32 spaces, they're never gonna park there, because if somebody's parked, they're parallel. If somebody's parked in front of their trailer, how the hell are they gonna get the trailer out?
Okay, so maybe not show, maybe a big work van or something that's not allowed in this lot, but.
They still have to fit within those
The point being
parking
is
spaces.
those 32 spots are gonna be used up, and people in the apartment aren't gonna have places to park. And they're gonna end up at Fairgrounds Restaurant, they're gonna end up up and down the south side of Tacoma.
Well, also
It's
keep in
gonna be a
mind,
mess that, it's just a mess.
keep in mind, there's 64 units, several of them are
I get
one-bedroom
that,
or
but
studio,
But a
and
two-bedroom
they're
with
82.
one spot for
Yeah, I know.
two-bedroom, that's
Reality is
ridiculous.
reality. Practical is 2 spaces. But if they have a second space, they're gonna have to deal with that other parking lot.
I think I'd like to echo Nat's remarks. The parking is constantly evolving. And if we look at the commercial spaces right now, the 200 units over that are maxed out, as we say, there's still land around. But what's to say that when we find that, we don't make another commercial place, maybe over by New South Road, and we put 200 units there, and we totally change where we're putting the parking. Now, all those commercial vehicles go to a different area, and that opens up 200 spaces for potentially this without adding more development, new parking. Instantly, there's a 200 parking savings. But I'm saying it
That's
will
a lot of
evolve,
speculation.
and there's
I
a
mean,
lot.
We
yeah.
know there's more cars
So you're
associated with this building than there's space
True,
for.
but
We
the
know that.
speculation is on the opposite end, too.
That's
What's
not
to say that we
speculation.
build a
Guys,
parking
Go
lot?
back and forth.
All right, what's to say that we build a parking lot and what's not needed? We have the position to, under a special permit, open it up, address concerns as they evolve, and add to it if we need it. We're planning for the worst, but assuming that we can change something. I think, on the other, you're assuming it's always going to be the worst, and we're going to maximize and not
I just think
utilize
there's
everything.
Not a single two-bedroom apartment here is gonna have one car associated with it.
Unless you have kids. single parent with kids. So, I mean, there could be any number of incarnations of a family unit. But keep in mind that we are much more aware, this board and our staff is much more aware of the potential problems and what to look for. And our office is right there, we can't miss it, than previous boards and previous regulatory agencies here. So we are well aware of what's going on here, and we're well aware of what the potential pitfalls are going to be, which means that if there's not going to be months down the road before we react, we can react very quickly.
How can you react? Build another parking lot? Like,
Well, it could be part of the Wait Drive going all the way through. They could do it right then and there, which is something we'd have to talk to the selectmen about.
I don't
Well,
see
they're
it
doing it.
functioning as it is, but.
I just think it's important to point out that that road and those parking spaces don't exist today. So they're additive from whatever the situation is, however bad or good it is, they add to the situation. So I believe that makes it completely appropriate to include as part of the impact of the project because
And we're not going to.
the spaces are created in conjunction with the project.
Right, but they're not exclusive for the project. You know, saying they're gonna get used up by the public.
The
Because
town-
there's such demand in the area already.
But the town has a number of options, including stickers, parking policies, resident only. I mean, there are a lot of cities and towns and private developments can come up with any number of parking management options that can help take the edge off those kind of problems. And the town has the luxury of picking whatever they think is in their own best interest.
Okay.
Can we mention like Sagem's Path? I've heard quite a few complaints about parking there. Is there, do you guys have a plan B for that?
We don't have any control over Sachem's Path.
Okay.
That didn't come here. That was a 40B that went through the ZBA.
Okay.
And I believe
So-
each one of them has 2 spaces, and I know there's been some problems over there.
So there's
I've
no-
seen them on my
There's
road.
no plan B there. They just,
That's not before us.
We're off topic.
Yeah,
We're
that's
off
not before
topic
us.
here.
all right,
But I do hear that over there.
all right.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks. And don't repeat. If you got something new to add, that's great.
It seemed like you were dying to hear from me.
We were, but not the same stuff we already heard.
She was, she's been.
Something new based on what you heard tonight.
There's not a lot new, so I'm going to be very, very brief.
It's Matt for the tape.
Matt Rainamo,
Yeah, you go.
9 Ketchalot Lane.
Yep.
Since the last meeting and since this came about, I've read the bylaw 100 times, and it says 32 units. So if, now's a good time. Now's a good time to say, let's get it back before the town. Let's change zoning. If we want 64 units, let's change the law to say 64 units. Let's not have to say regarding the law, well, no, it's 32 per 60,000 square feet.
Madam Chair,
Because it doesn't say that.
Just finish it.
So I think that, the further this goes along without that being addressed, it just becomes more problematic. Now's a great opportunity to send it back and clarify it, because it should be clarified if this is going to be allowed. Also, if it was 32 units, that would kind of suggest, if I'm not mistaken, that you could do it, that there's 2 of them. And from the very start, we've heard, no, this is 1. But it's 2 for the zoning, but it's just 1. We can't just do a 32 unit one. And secondly, this is new, so we've heard a lot that this is a town project, and the town's going to mitigate, and the town's going to build a road, and the town's going to do this. And then we've heard that it's a Halkeen project when that's suitable. And the town is skipping over a lot of things that need to happen in public projects because they're leasing it to Halkeen. But then, when it suits the town and it suits this project, they say, no, it's a public project. So you're cherry picking on depending on what issue, on whether this is a lease to a private company or whether it's a public project. And that's problematic. And I think that you should get your ducks in a row. And if it's a public project, you need to follow the rules that a public project needs to follow. And if it's not, if it's a lease, then we shouldn't be talking about, well, the town will build them a road, the town will build them a parking lot. It's a public project. Because right now, you're straddling the line, or this, I'm not to say you have the ability to stop it. The town is dangerously straddling the line. And when it suits them to say it's public, it's public. And when it suits them to say, no, it's a lease, it's Halkine, that's what they say.
Okay, hang on, right there.
Sure.
A lot of the town projects are public-private partnerships. Most of the 40Bs in the state are public-private partnerships. It's public land, like the Housing Authority owned the land that Satcham's Path is on. We entered into an agreement with Housing Assistance Corp. From the Cape. They got the land very much like they're getting the land, but we actually turned the title over to them so that people could own their properties, not a 99-year lease type of thing, which in this state, as you know, is tantamount to ownership. So there's a lot of these public-private partnerships, particularly surrounding housing, affordable housing, all over the state. So nobody's playing a shell game with that, whether it's public or private. It's a public-private partnership, which is the only way most affordable housing in the state gets built. So don't cherry pick the public-private. It is a public-private partnership, which is allowed and is quite prevalent, not just here, but all over the place. So that's not an issue. And I think we did cover the 32 unit per 60,000 square feet. The opinion of town council who is here is that it is 2 lots. That made no sense to send out 2 RFPs and have one guy do half the parking lot and one guy do the other half of the parking lot. The whole scope of the thing is to provide 64 units, 32 on one and 32 on the other, which was in the scope of the bylaw. Did you want to have a comment about that?
I'm happy to speak to that. So, as I indicated in my letter to the board prior to your last hearing, the original proposal here was to have a 2-lot project with 0 lot lines, and that waiver was requested. And so I think clearly everyone knew what was being proposed, and that's what was advertised. Subsequently, Article 20 at the special town meeting passed, and the clear intent of that article was to add a new subsection 4 to Section 8D, which specifically allows, quote, a larger project, larger than what? Larger than 32 units, if an applicant can demonstrate that the property could be divided into 2 or more lots. And so here, not only has that been demonstrated, in fact, there's an A&R plan on record. And so clearly this property can be divided into 2 or more lots, and therefore this board does have the discretion under the recent special town meeting vote to approve a larger project.
However, as I said at the last meeting, under the current bylaw, without Article 20, we still have the right to do this project under the current bylaws, before
And
the
that's how
Attorney
the-
General even signs off on Article 20.
And that's how the decision is
That's
going to
how the
read,
decision's
that you're
gonna be
granting the
phrased.
waiver.
Yes, not under Article 20.
Right, I understand all that, but you're assuming that the intent of the 32-unit limit is an intent on 60,000 per and a density intent, right?
Yeah.
Well, is it impossible that a lot of Nantucket voters assumed that anything bigger than a 32-unit project was just too scary, and that's why this was approved?
I don't think it was parsed that way at town meeting.
But
I'm not even sure it was called a
It
town
could be,
meeting.
right?
From a legal
It wasn't even
perspective,
called a town meeting.
from a legal perspective, you have to interpret a bylaw based upon its language.
Yeah, not intent.
And generally speaking, from a zoning law perspective, density limitations are a function of how much land you have to develop. So if you had 100 acres of land that could be split into 50 2-acre parcels, I don't think it would be deemed a reasonable interpretation to suggest that only 32 units could be built on that 100 acres, just as 32 units could be built on 2 acres. And I think the clear intent of the recent town meeting vote was to allow, quote, larger projects on a single lot if you could demonstrate that you could divide it into 2 lots. So,
I think
That's
we
why
all
I don't
know
wanna
that
beat that to death.
that the recent town meeting vote is problematic, if we're going to lean on that. I think we
not
can
leaning
all
on
agree
it.
on that. So we're talking about the intent of the original bylaw. And I'll happily grant you that that is a reading of it. Another reading of this is that the voters of Nantucket said 32 units is a lot. Let's pass a bylaw that allows 32 units. And the law doesn't say 32 per. It says 32. And
Per
that's it.
60, you have to read the whole bylaw.
No, it doesn't. I've read it
32
hundreds of
per
times.
60,000.
Okay, I'm well aware that I'm probably not going to change your mind. I'm just on the record now, and I thank you for your time.
And your attorney expressed that in the letter before, which
He
is on
did.
file.
I think we're good,
Okay.
unless you've got some questions.
How's Thanksgiving?
It was.
Let's stay on topic. It's been 3 hours now.
Yeah.
And I've got another job I have to do after this, so let's stay on topic. Anything else? I have to do a whole brochure for the house tour tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else over there, Norman? You just hanging out? Nothing else to do?
He remembers when all the roads were dirt.
Yeah. Yeah, Hooper Farm was dirt.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
When's the appeal period?
We have to file the decision first.
Well, once the decision's filed,
It's 20-day appeal.
the same as everything, 20
Yeah.
days.
Okay, so what's your pleasure, guys? We've gone through all the changes in this, and Andrew suggested that we do something with it and then agree to sign it with those changes we've talked about in the office. Barry?
So, are there two outstanding issues that I'm reading right now? One's Tacoma. Do we need to clarify what we're
The
going to do
parking?
with that?
Just the north
The
side.
request or the.
Let me ask Andrew first.
The
then-
condition is written that it's on the north side, so the
Okay.
side where the existing sidewalk is
Yep.
only,
Okay.
No residences there.
not on the southern side. I think there's 3 abutting residents on the other side. I will tell you that, I mean, based on looking at it, there's not a lot of shoulder there.
Yeah.
So but again, if it's the decision of the board that you request no parking on that other side, you can put it in the condition.
No.
It can be brought up at any time.
Okay.
Again, it is a public road. It certainly could be brought up, and the selectmen can order that at any time.
What's the other issue?
So, are we good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
we-
perfect.
on the
Okay,
north
good.
side, yes.
Good. So, I think I'm sorry, you're not going to like me, but there's still this issue of Sunday construction.
I'll vote
And,
against it.
okay, you can,
No, I can't, because you already lost.
can I at least say something?
Yep.
As opposed to you just cutting me off and saying, no, no, no?
It's been a long
Other
time
people,
here.
yeah, but I think the board members may have a different opinion toward this, and I'm thinking between October 15th and April 15th, that becomes available to them to do it during limited hours. We
Yeah.
could set the hours between, I don't know, 10 to 4.
Yeah, could be something like that.
I'm going to vote against that.
You've already made,
So
but
you're
you're not.
saying nobody can work in January?
But you're not-
I didn't say anything about interior construction or dropping the trailers and things like that.
Madam Chair, you've got other members of this board who have.
No, he just asked me a
You
question.
heard that some of the neighbors.
Why don't you make a motion,
Want to get the
Barry?
project.
All right,
done
so
quick.
I'm going to make the motion then, because generally, if I were doing it, I probably would have pulled each one of you individually, but that's okay.
No, you can pull. I don't care what you do. Let's,
Yeah, I mean, I
let's
just,
keep on
I
going back and
just,
forth.
What was it, October to April? Is that what you said?
October 15th to April 15th. All right.
So it would be April
So-
15th through
I'll
October
make it- I'll make
15th.
it easy.
That you
I'm
have
gonna make a
no
motion.
Sundays.
I'll make a motion at this point that we allow construction to occur between October 15th to April 15th between the hours of 10 and 4.
On Sunday.
On Sundays, yes.
I would
That's my
second.
motion.
And April, October to 15th to what?
April 15th.
Of any given year.
And
That's
then
how it
made
has to
Dr.
go.
Locke the second.
I'm second already.
All right, there we go. Let's just get it up.
Okay, there's a motion made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Barry's motion?
All right.
Aye.
All those opposed? So I'll make a motion to reconsider since I voted against it. Correct? We've had this
if you
discussed
follow
at the
Robert's
ZBA, too.
rules, then it suggests that you should be on the,
On the,
on the prevailing side
Which was
in
me.
order to, well, no, I think it was
we
32.
defeated it. They didn't prevail. We
We
prevailed.
didn't make a motion to make that a condition, did we? Or
Yes,
was
you
just
did.
getting a sense of the.
Because.
Well, that would be,
I prevailed and Joe prevailed because they didn't prevail. Didn't it?
technically, only the grant of the permit requires the supermajority.
Yes. This is a simple,
This is a
So,
special permit requires 4 to
Right, no,
1.
I understand that.
The approve, I mean, technically, this is a proposal for a condition to go in a special permit.
Right.
And then the special permit would thereafter require a supermajority.
So we're just
And-
voting on the condition?
that's all. It's just the condition.
Because we don't usually do that here.
We've done it before.
Rarely.
We have
Not in my time here.
respectfully,
We certainly
yes,
don't
it
want,
has, it
we
has.
certainly
happened
don't
many
want
times.
to have any detriment to the.
Respectfully.
Okay, so that did not
Linda's
pass.
vote,
Hold on.
And it'll be-
As far as I can tell.
Joe's vote.
It did pass.
It did pass.
Yes,
Well, I'm going to vote
but
against the
3 to
main,
2, not
then I'll vote
4 to
against the
1.
main thing, and you don't have enough votes.
Can I make a comment?
Okay?
We don't want to jeopardize our permit for the Sunday construction. So, you know,
This is,
I think it's a little crazy to lose a permit over a fire
I-
on a Sunday.
That's why I didn't want this to go to vote.
So,
and respectfully, I'm somewhat concerned that one simple thing would overturn an entire decision like this. And I really,
I don't need to be chastised by you about how I
Well-
felt, and I've been very clear about how I felt about this particular issue.
right, but it doesn't,
Very- Very, just again.
And you forced
I'm
the
not,
issue.
I'm not,
It
you know
ain't
what?
worth it, arguing.
I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna.
So I don't know where to go with this now.
We don't need this to turn into.
Right,
Lily's
this
case.
is not what I would have expected.
I have not
So,
been
and-
anything
and-
other than clear about how I felt about that.
I'll make a motion to rescind the vote.
And I will
on
gladly
the,
second that, sir.
On the, work hours on Sunday.
I'm gladly seconding it.
And if it becomes a problem, we said they can come back and ask for it. I don't have a problem with that. If it becomes a real problem because of rain, the weather has impacted some of these other large projects where we had to extend them into July in order to keep working outside. I think the Graydon House had one, didn't they? And the Whaling Museum had one.
I think the point
Dreamland.
is, too, are you going to require a public hearing for them to come back?
We
To
didn't on
request
some of the other stuff.
exceptions?
Yeah.
Then that should be included if you're gonna make that
I'll make that in my motion.
Wait, you gotta rescind first.
All right, okay, so.
So you made a motion to rescind that one?
And I'm seconding it.
Okay. And that's just the condition. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So what was your motion now?
Make a motion that the applicant can return,
Andrew, do you want to phrase it?
for a minor modification to the special permit.
No, that has to be voted. Hold it. That has to be voted.
So, I don't want to get into
You make a
the
condition.
concept is here that exceptions to the Sunday rule can come before the board on a normal agenda, not requiring reopening of the public hearing.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's my motion.
okay. And I'm only talking about exterior construction.
I'll
And-
second it.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Is that was your motion?
the earlier discussion about they are allowed to do the deliveries, they are allowed to use hand tools, they are allowed other types of work that aren't power tools and everything else. So that's how that condition will be
We're gonna have,
prepared.
just to, I know we have a motion on the floor here, but I want to just make something clear, Sarah, over there.
In the corner.
You have to be able to unload a trailer on a Sunday.
We've already said that
Okay,
twice.
no, you said something about dropping pallets or something.
I
I just wanna
assume
make
they're
sure
not
that
going to
we
be
don't have
dropping
use an
things.
electric forklift or something that we don't have invented yet. So.
Can we get past
No,
this?
and I
Unload
said
the
I
trailer.
said that with the forklift.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Thank you. Okay.
That was like an hour ago. All right, Nat made a motion. I guess Joe seconded
Yeah, I
that?
second it, yeah.
Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have,
Close the public hearing?
Yes.
So moved.
I'll make that one. Oh, okay.
Joe, you said, who got it?
Could be Barry.
Barry made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, we have a decision with the, the changes we've gone over tonight already. And somebody wants to make a motion with that
So,
condition.
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit and site plan review for the project as determined with all changes as of tonight, and endorse the decision as submitted.
And sign in the office.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a second? Okay, Nat made that, Barry made the motion, Nat seconded. Any further discussion? Was that including the site plan, Barry, or do we have to do that at another time, Andrew?
No, his motion included the site plan.
I know they have to come back at some point.
And just for clarity, we're going to add the condition about the easement allowing the rear lot for
Real
Tacoma,
lot,
which,
for future lots.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Any further discussion on that one? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Alrighty, thank you very much. That was unanimous. What happened to your opposition? We dealt with it, didn't we?
5149.
Yeah. Okay, what's on here? Well, thank you, everybody, for coming.
That's all we got?
Thanks for sticking it out, guys. And next planning board meeting will be Monday, December 11th at 6 o'clock. Somebody want to make an adjourn at, I don't even know what time that says, 9:09? That's your motion, Nat?
Yeah.
Is that Joe's second? All those in favor? All right, thank you, everybody.